A ballerina's perspective, from performing with New York City Ballet and Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater to publishing poetry books and mentoring kids and teens. Join us in a weekly discussion with experts to gain mental health clarity and achieve growth in moral consciousness. Give our show a 5 stars, comment, share, and come along for the ride. Welcome back to another episode of the Growth, Grace, and Gratitude podcast. Today we have a very special guest, award-winning memoirist Sue William Silverman, who delivers her most distilled and emotionally vivid work yet in Selected Misdemeanors, Essays at the Mercy of the Reader. This collection of flash-length personal essays examines the often messy ways we all search for love, home, and meaning. So, what a beautiful story you have written. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing more of your inspiring work.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's really lovely to meet you.
Yes, it's so nice to connect with fellow writers when they're kind of trying to help the reader access or heal trauma and connect with resilience, because I think so many of us are craving this sort of frequency or feeling when it comes to recovery or healing, especially those on the spiritual path who are the empaths of the world, who connect more to their emotional body and feel a lot more. So, thank you for bringing your work to the forefront for others to experience.
Of course, I mean, it's really my pleasure. And I mean, of course, I get a lot out of it too when I hear back from people who have read my books and tell me that they've connected with them. I hope that it's empowering to them, but it's also empowering to me because it forges that human connection between, author and reader.
If you're ready to shake off that daily stress, come join us for online beginner, adult, ballet, and yoga classes each week to connect with the flow of movement and the art of ballet into perfect synergy. Come as you are and learn to love your body a little bit more and gain strength and flexibility with each class. All are welcome. Sign up at balletartsmovement@gmail.com. First class free. Televital supports focus, energy, immunity, sleep, recovery, and resilience. Start feeling better today on a cellular level with zeolite, super green juice, micronutrient gut support, and more. Get over 50% off your first order for Televital. Link in the description of the podcast. 100%. Yes, that's so true. And when it comes to the central message of selected misdemeanors, can you explain a little bit more about that and how there's a theme there about home and belonging?
Yes, of course. So, just to start, the selected misdemeanors, just to clarify, they're all emotional
No.
misdemeanors. So, I've never done anything that landed me in a court of law or jail. It's nothing like that, just to assure everybody. So, they're really emotional misdemeanors, kind of transgressions, miscalculations of love, um, relationships with inappropriate men, things like that. And the overall theme is about this narrator's search for home. And so, like on the one hand, this narrator, myself, I really want to find home. But as much as I yearn for that, these misdemeanors kind of sabotage my attempt to get home. So that's sort of the major conflict of the book is, on the one hand, oh, I really want stability, I want comfort, I want safety, but my actions sort of push me away from that and they sabotage those efforts. So yeah, that's the overall theme in many ways.
And I think that's such a great lesson for us to understand, because so often we are repeating either, emotional patterns, emotional experiences and timelines and situations. So when we get together with people, we might think we are meeting new people for the first time, but actually slowly but surely we start to see the unraveling of our own behavioral patterns. So yes, it's such a brilliant way to kind of give that awareness to be like, oh yes, what are my patterns and how are they holding me back from achieving that sense of home and belonging, for sure.
Yeah, it's sort of repeating the same thing over and over, hoping for a different outcome, and it's not gonna work until you finally, stop it, and in my case, I did finally get into therapy, and so I was able to sort of interrupt those patterns.
That's beautiful. And it's written in compressed prose for people who are, wanting to learn more about writing and the different kinds. What is that? And why did you choose to write it in this kind of format?
Right, so this is a collection of flash essays, and flash basically means short. So there's some essays that are just a paragraph, most of them about maybe 3 to 5 pages. There are a couple that are a little bit longer, but it is a very condensed form. And, I'd already written books like that are have a long narrative arc. So, on the one hand, I just wanted to try something different, just, so I could evolve as a writer. But this also made a lot of sense to me because, um while most of us do have like these big events in our lives, say, unhappy childhoods, loss, divorce, stuff like that, when you think about life, most of it is comprised of kind of very short increments of time. And so the flash form is really completely built for these moments, the things that happen between these larger segments of experience. Um, so I just wanted to kind of explore sort of the human condition in these sort of brief occurrences. And, how do we catch these sort of fleeting moments of time? I sort of think of them as sort of shimmering epiphanies because they are, we do have epiphanies from them, but they shimmer, which means that they don't really last very long. So, um, so in many cases, though, the form is small, but the inside is vast because we still are exploring the human condition and what these transgressions, these misdemeanors meant to me. Like what is the metaphor of the experience? And so by discovering the metaphor of an experience, that's a way to sort of show the reader a universal moment so that's something that they can relate to. So again, the form is small, it's short, but inside it's vast through metaphor.
That is so beautifully explained. I love that. And I think it's so great for people who have such, in a way, short attention spans. We want to get to the information quick, right? And here you're doing this with, immense value as well. So it's a wonderful way to get the reader across quicker, to get them into the story. Because, yes, it's like the quicker you grab the reader's attention, the more successful, you'll have at your work being processed. So, yes, I love that. It's amazing. Podpitch is the first and only software that finds, writes, and sends pitches to podcast hosts from your actual email address. Podpitch will make sure you get podcast bookings, guaranteed. Link in the description of the podcast. ClickFunnels easily build any type of online business and sales funnel in record time, no matter what your product, service, or niche, without any tech design or experience whatsoever. Try the ClickFunnels 14-day free trial. Link in the description of the podcast. And
Thank you.
what advice would you give writers in terms of, like, you're talking a little bit about metaphors, and I think it's metaphors are so great to help people kind of open up their work and expand beyond. So what is some advice you would give to writers on how to find metaphor? And here you also mentioned to start with sensory details. It's very interesting.
Thank you. Well, I'll give an example, which might be the easiest way to show it. So, on the cover of the book, there's an image of an upside down belly up goldfish. And this poor little belly up goldfish is a metaphor in one of the essays. And this is how it works. So, in this essay, I, as narrator, I have a boyfriend and he's drafted and he goes off to boot camp. But the relationship isn't that loving. I want to marry him. He doesn't want to marry me. So he leaves and goes to boot camp. While he's gone, one of my misdemeanors is I have an affair with his roommate. So that's not very cool, but I do that. And that's one of my misdemeanors. But also, so I don't feel so lonely, I happen to buy a goldfish that I have, in a little bowl. okay, so I have this affair with the roommate. He breaks up with me. I'm so distraught. I forget to feed my poor little goldfish, and the goldfish dies, which is another of my misdemeanors. But more importantly, in terms of art, because that's creative nonfiction, sort of turning your life into art, this goldfish becomes a metaphor, not just for the fact that he died, but he becomes a metaphor for loss, loss of love, kind of betrayal. I betrayed the goldfish. I also betrayed my boyfriend. The roommate betrayed me. So it's working. So this one little belly up goldfish becomes a metaphor for all of these different relationships. So the upshot for this is that when you're writing your creative nonfiction, whether it's flash or a memoir, look for these sensory details that are sort of outside of yourselves, things like a goldfish, and convey them, write them in such a way, portray them in such a way so that they then become a metaphor. Because if I just said to you, "Oh, I felt betrayed," or "I felt lost," you would not be able to relate to that. Those are abstract words, and people cannot relate to an abstraction. That's why we need to have these sensory details, something really tangible that the reader can hold on to, so that they then can see, oh yeah, this goldfish is a metaphor for these things, and yes, I have felt betrayed as well. So even if nobody's ever had a goldfish, they can feel the metaphor of what the goldfish represents.
That's beautiful. And yeah, it's such a great reminder how metaphors kind of connect the works of the words and the art together in a kind of like synchronistic, symbolic way. So yeah, I love that. It's very inspiring and it's almost like intuitive, connecting more with kind of the journey of the narrator. And why
Thank
do you
you.
think it's so important for women to write their truth, to express their feelings? And what is your message to women who are afraid to tell their truth? Because maybe like, they do have these emotional wounds that they feel shame or guilt about.
Yes. Well, first of all, it's really important because traditionally women's voices have been silenced or anybody considered other. Traditionally in literature, we've heard the male narrative and basically the white male narrative, and the other voices have been silenced. And it's so important for women to tell our stories because otherwise, we have to like claim our territory, claim our stake in the narrative. Our voices have to be out there. I mean, that's sort of the basis of that whole hashtag Me Too movement, which actually evolved after like the whole memoir movement really began sort of in the mid to late 1990s. And I think that the hashtag Me Too sort of evolved from that, from women's voices. And I know it can be scary, but if we don't tell our stories, then those stories are lost forever. Nobody will tell your story. And I know yes, it's scary. But the thing to remember, I think, is that whatever it is that happened to you in the past that you're writing about, you already survived that. So let's say if you're writing about a scary childhood, you already survived that, right? So now it's your opportunity to tell that story. Now you control the narrative. Nobody, parents, nobody else controls the narrative anymore. They're your words, they're your story. And when you're writing, really try not to think about the outside world. Just the first step is just to get your story down on paper. So just write it and don't worry about what anybody's going to think about you. Just write it. Then once all the words are down on paper, then the next step you can think about, maybe if you want to show it to the world, because that's a choice. You don't have to publish it. I'm a writer, so I do publish my work, but you don't have to. Most important thing, just write and just know you're not alone.
That's such a beautiful advice because I think that's the most often the collective feeling that people, especially women, get when they want to put themselves out there. They feel like, am I worthy? Is that okay? Do I have to achieve this, and this beforehand? There's so many thoughts, subconscious thoughts that go on in their minds. And I think it's so wonderful to hear from a fellow writer who is open to expressing and saying, you don't have to publish it. You can just write it down and see how that feels. I think even that first step is where people become kind of afraid and taking that first step to just write it. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So just pretend nobody's ever going to see it. Just write it for yourself.
Unlock your best life with Soul app. Book a holistic wellness experience with a trained guide and start changing your life today with compassion practices, inner healing, food and diet, and so much more. Tap into a healthier and happier life with the number one purposeful living app in the US, the Soul app, link in the description of the podcast. Sanger Daniel's online seminar promoting a positive message of self-healing with bioenergy work together with live seminars and remote coaching. Use code BIO20 for a 20% discount for our audience. Link in the description of the podcast.
And then you worry about the rest later. But just know the importance of our voices. I mean, we just have to have our voices be part of the conversation.
100% so true. And let's talk a little bit about the impact of first sentences as like a first impression. Why do you think first sentences matter, if they do really matter? And also, can you share one of yours as well, one of your sentences?
Yes. So first sentences matter because they really set up. Well, if it's an essay collection, they're going to set up each particular essay. But even an essay collection is sort of a portal into what the whole sort of feeling of the book is. And in selected misdemeanors, the first sentence is so the essay is called At the Apollo Theater. And I grew up in the West Indies in St. Thomas, and that's where the Apollo Theater is. And so I'm probably in about third grade when this event happens. And the first sentence is, "My father sexually misloved me growing up, but that's another story." And so I'd already written about my father, so I don't want to have to rehash the whole thing. I've written about him in one memoir and mentioned him in other writing. But yet, my father having misloved me growing up, that is sort of my core story, and everything else in some ways evolves out of that. And then just the rest of that paragraph is this. So it starts, "My father sexually misloved me growing up, but that's another story." This story is about Marco the Magnifico, a magician who wore a turban and silky Turkish pants, no shirt, gold necklaces, a red bauble dangled from an ear. So it really is about this. I'm at this theater, I go to this magic show, and I volunteer to be his assistant for one of his tricks. And so it's really about a child's kind of entry into the world of magic and what does this magic mean, and sort of this feeling of power that I'm part of this magic trick. And is this magician powerful enough to, and I call it sort of abracadabra me into another little girl, one who would be safe. So without even really talking about my father, I'm still able to convey this other whole experience about my sort of quote relationship with this magician.
That's beautiful. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. It's very vibrant, eye-opening, and yes, you really catch the reader with that hook, that kind of feeling like, oh wow, like I didn't see this coming. And I think that's the anticipation that the fellow reader kind of really wants to experience and explore. So you're opening up that space to kind of enter and join what's coming next.
Thank you. And the other thing I might mention, that in this particular essay, this magician himself is a metaphor. I mean, he's a metaphor for sort of the magic and magical thinking that a young child can embrace, because in some ways that is a way of survival. I mean, when you're young and you don't have control over your life and scary things are happening, we do get into a kind of magical thinking. And so the magician is himself a metaphor for that.
100%. Even speaking about like familial concepts and relationships and how that impacts us. You mentioned about the metaphors of family and the upside down sister. Can you describe a little bit about what that's about?
Sure. Yes. So I have an older sister, and I always worshipped her, loved her. I still do. She still doesn't really want anything to do with me. But anyway, this is when we were kids, and we would play this game. We would walk on our hands, and see who could reach a destination first. And so I would like to play the game just because that was like the only time my sister would really pay attention to me. And she liked to play the game, I think, because she always won. So she knew she could beat me, and that made her feel, like she was better than I am. So, anyway, so basically, if I just tell you what I just said, then that's just kind of an anecdote. This is what my sister and I did. But then when it comes time to turn your life into art, the way I describe my sister and myself walking on our hands, I start seeing my sister as an upside down sister, which is to say that she's really, that the sort of love, which is, I use sort of in quotes, is really upside down because she doesn't really love me the way a sister should love her younger sister. And so she too then becomes a metaphor. So walking upside down, and I see her upside down. She's the upside down sister with the upside down love, and so that's how she becomes a metaphor, just by dint of walking upside down on her hands. And so even if, like, if the readers never doesn't have an older sister, never walked upside down on their hands together, nothing like that, they would be able to relate to the concept, the metaphor of this upside downness, because at some point in our lives, most people have been in any kind of relationship that wasn't sort of equal or balanced or didn't feel exactly right.
I thank you so much for sharing that. It's such a vulnerable, raw feeling because, yes, for us empaths who have sibling wounds, it is so like could be universal because there's that feeling of empaths wanting to connect. The sisterhood or brotherhood is such a sacred bond that we almost as souls feel like it's part of our purpose, it's part of our mission. We want to connect on this deep bond. And yes, when we do feel that apparent rejection from our, we consider from little kids, childhood, our soul family, our blood family, it's from ancestral, we kind of anticipate the mirror of being loved back. So it's such a beautiful thing to also understand. Unfortunately, sometimes life happens like that, whether it is like you mentioned, whether it is family, whether it is friends, relationships,
Right.
things do happen, and it's unfortunate, but it's part of the world, and it's okay to see that and to process those feelings of grief and to move through it, or in your case, to write about it and to share about this experience in written form, which is so healing, I imagine, as well.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Yes, it's so wonderful. So thank you so much, Sue, for coming on the podcast, sharing your beautiful work of art with our community. And where can people connect with you and buy your book and see all of your content?
Right. So, my you can find me at my website, which is my whole name, SueWilliamSilverman.com. That's SueWilliamSilverman. So SueWilliamSilverman.com. And my book is available at all the online bookstores, Amazon, bookshop.org. If you go to my website, there's a link to buying it there as well. Or if you have a local bookstore, you can, if they don't have it, you can certainly ask them to order it. So, yes, and thank you very much.